Welcome to this episode of our extraordinary webinar series, where we hear from leaders driving change in our industry and what their experiences can mean for those coming through today. Today, we're focusing on purpose-driven leadership and the journey of building a business around values as well as results. I'm delighted to be joined by Philippa Roberts, co-founder and CEO of Binit, the waste management platform. Philippa's story is about taking on one of the most everyday and yet complex issues in our society, waste. With Binit, she set out to rethink how businesses deal with waste, making it simpler, more transparent, and more sustainable. It's a story of entrepreneurship, resilience, and staying true to purpose while building a commercial company in a very entrenched sector. Philippa, thank you for being with us today. To begin with, perhaps you could share a little bit of your background and your journey.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me. So unsurprisingly, I think probably to lots of people, waste wasn't a sector that I aspired to work in growing up. I'm sure at some point I pretended to be a bin man, as a kid, carry a bin on my shoulder. But actually, my original plan was to go and work in the city. I thought I would go and do something financial, but I didn't get into university first time round. So I was rejected by all the universities and then failed my Oxbridge. So I ended up with an enforced gap year. And so one of the things I did and was very lucky to do during that enforced gap year was go and work on a sea turtle conservation project in Costa Rica. And for me, that was the thing that changed everything. So I hadn't really been aware of environmental impacts, particularly around the oceans and ocean plastics. And bear in mind, this was a long time ago now. So, this was over 30 years ago. I think I'd probably always grown up in a family where, especially with my mum, those things mattered. So we had solar panels, we ate organic, she was quite
Yeah, so you had that ethos anyway, growing
yeah.
up.
Yeah, very, very much. We had happy chickens, and she was very, conscious of those sorts of things. But it was only when I was going out and working on that project and saw the sea turtles. And at the time, these were leatherback turtles, which are vast prehistoric creatures and really incredible. They were at risk from both poachers, but from pollution, so from plastics in the ocean. So at the time, I thought, well, when I do get into university, after university, I can spend a little time working in waste, and then I can go and do something like this, actually go back and work in the Caribbean and be on a beach and save sea turtles. And that part hasn't happened, but I have ended up I have ended up working in waste, and mainly because actually I really enjoy it. I find bins and what people throw away really fascinating. So for me, I've got this amazing job where I get to go around all these businesses and see behind the scenes. So it's a bit like inside the factory, I see behind the scenes and I rummage in their bins. So I thought I'd do it for a few years, and 25 years later, here I am still working in waste.
So how did it come about? What was the first sort of enter into the waste sector for you?
It was literally just I applied for after I did my master's, I applied for a load of different environmental jobs, and I got one with a private waste management company in London. So I thought, well, I'll go and do this and see how I get on. And like I say, I really love going into businesses and working with businesses. In terms of Binit, that came around because I was doing a lot of consultancy and sort of more project work. And when you wake up one day and go, what about the sea turtles? Am I really having that much
An impact? Yeah.
Yeah, and I live in Devon now. So I've been involved in some of the beach cleans here in Devon, but lucky enough to spend a lot of time on the beach living down here. And you do just see the litter. And when I was involved in one of the beach cleans, I was really surprised by how crude I think the data collection was in terms of what they could actually do with it. So in its first iteration, Binit was a litter app. So you could take a picture of a piece of litter and geotag it. And the idea was we would build this picture of what was being littered where and get much more precise data on it. So then you can stop these things at source. But it turns out that actually that was a really hard thing to monetize.
Yeah.
So I did this absolutely awful pitch down at Heathrow at the airport and really couldn't quite verbalize what it was that I was trying to do. And the only way I could think of making money out of it as a business was to start blackmailing the brands who were the ones whose products were being littered most. And I didn't think that was a very viable business idea.
No, more campaigning than business, I'd say.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was. And I think more of a climate science project. But in part of doing that, one of the people I interviewed when I was sort of researching this as a problem was the head of street cleansing in Exeter for the city council. And she said at the time that a lot of the on-street litter came from poor trade waste services. So what happens is businesses, often in city centres, don't have space for bins. They put their waste and recycling in bags out on the street. And then in a city like Exeter, those bags are ripped open by seagulls,
yeah,
students, and homeless people. And
right.
so the litter blows around. This is a city on an estuary, leads very close to the sea. You can see it pretty much out of the window. So it goes in the storm drains and literally straight out to sea. And it also costs the public purse a vast sum of money. Fly tip and littering is over £1 billion a year problem to us as taxpayers. That,
It's
local.
extraordinary. Mm,
It's a significant problem. And at that point, I think I kind of went, okay, well, I understand this. This is where I started, selling commercial waste and recycling services to businesses. So I started looking around at what they were being offered, and it just hadn't changed. Hadn't really changed in the 15 years since I started doing it. And you kind of think, wow, the world has
no
moved on.
impact at all. Yeah.
Moved on so much. And the big companies were, in terms of education, were laminating an A4 poster and sticking it above a bin.
Yeah.
And you can't recycle a piece of paper once you laminate it. it's,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's crazy. So in a time of Amazon and social media and people wanting to report and understand what's going on, it felt like a real opportunity for us to give a better service to businesses, but at the same time actually do something real about waste going into the ocean. So part of what we do, especially here in Exeter, which is quite a test bed for us, is around shared bins. And we've been developing tech around shared bins. So multiple customers, and often hospitality customers, can share bins, and then we get them emptied much, much more frequently. So they're not having to keep the waste inside.
And what are the businesses learning from that engagement with Binit? So are they learning more about sort of what they're wasting and then able to sort of adapt in that sense? Is it working in that way?
Yeah, and it depends, I think, where they are in their sustainability journey. And one of the things about being a value-led business is in the early days, we had conversations about, well, we only want to work with companies that care about the environment and they really want to do something. And then you quite quickly realize you have the biggest impact with businesses who absolutely don't care and we're just chucking everything in one bin. And if you can start them even
Yeah.
separating it
Yeah.
better, then you
Yeah.
have bigger impact. And so we don't pick and choose our customers. We want to work with everybody, whether they care or not. We've collected a lot of data. So we're an investor funded business. So our first product, all our bins have a QR code on them, and you can scan that and it gives 24/7 customer service, which I think is why the biggest sector we work with is hospitality. So when KPs are coming out the end of the night and the lock's broken or the bin's overflowing, they can tell us through the app instead of leaving a post-it for the next shift manager the next day when someone's in the office.
So it can be much more proactive and people can take ownership over it, which, will have that impact, won't it?
Yeah, and it does mean that we can be more responsive, but people can remember to tell us, because I think one of the challenges for hospitality, it's so fast moving, and with the shift patterns, everybody's so busy, even by the time sometimes that you've walked back in and then you're dealing with the next problem back in your branch, people can forget that there's a wheel broken on a bin or something. So just to be able to do it physically out there while you're there, I think has been really useful. The other thing they can tell us, though, is how full the bin is. So what we've done is built this really big data set, because most waste data is weight. But actually, as a customer, you care about if the bin's overflowing or not. And again, especially if you're a restaurant, your bin's overflowing, environmental health can shut you down. These are business critical issues. So we know now we have these machine learning algorithms now that are running, and we know if a bin is a certain weight in a certain sector or business size and certain location, that actually means that it's full or it's overflowing. And we can use all that data to benchmark customers. So it works particularly well with multi-site customers, which is why we've actually built a proper platform now. So although we manage waste services, we now can provide all this through the platform, and we can give the data on an intensity basis. So actually based on the number of covers to cope with those, again, we're in the Southwest, those seasonal peaks.
Yep.
A lot of our customers are super busy now, the ones on the coast where city centres are dropping off. Now the students have gone, but come winter, it drops right back down, and let them know how they're comparing with previous years, how sites compare against each other. So you can really drive improvements in performance.
Yeah. And you were talking about various iterations of Binit. So what have been the biggest challenges for you as a founder, and how have they shaped you along the way?
I think it's a difficult journey starting something from scratch, actually. And again, I think I'm lucky I come from an entrepreneurial family. All but one of my siblings have our own businesses, both my parents did. So
It
I
was
think
almost natural for you to think that way, maybe.
yeah, I had a newspaper at primary school that I sold in the playground, and by mail order, I had, I've always done this sort of thing. But I think I've got that resilience gene, maybe, that you need, because it is quite a hard slog. I think Bill Gates said we underestimate how far we can get in a year. No, we overestimate how far we can get in a year, but we underestimate how far we can get in a decade.
Okay.
So one of the challenges for me is I just feel impatient all the time. I feel like we're not doing enough. We haven't, developed our tech enough. We're not growing fast enough. And then you look back over a longer time scale and kind of go, wow, God,
Look how far we've come.
look how far we've come. Our first bit of technology hardware, we made a sensor, and it literally was in a chocolate box wrapped in black gaffer tape, stuck inside a bin. It's still in my desk drawer now, and now we've got real stuff, with the pending out in field trials. So I think it takes longer. There's a joke, isn't there, that every overnight success takes at least a decade.
Yeah.
So it is a slog, and it is quite hard work. Along the way, there's some fundamental stuff that just really matters. Cash flow.
Yeah.
And as you grow, the bigger you get, the more challenging in some ways cash flow can be, because you just have so much more money going in and out every month. So stuff like, boring things like credit processes, the things when you're small, all your businesses, and you can go around, knock on the door and pick up the phone, and all of a
Have that
sudden
personal touch. Yeah. And have oversight personally.
yeah. And then that sort of stuff changes. The team is super important, actually, and we are at a stage now where we're scaling, where the biggest challenge for me at the moment is focusing. And I've got this thing written on my whiteboard that I should only be doing what only I can do. So stepping back from the things that other people in the team are perfectly capable of doing, not micromanaging, not going, oh, I've got a good idea, or why don't you do this like that, or can I help out on that, and step back and just do the things that I'm the only person who can do that, which for me personally is actually can be quite a challenge.
Yeah. So would you say that's sort of the biggest thing you've had to learn along the way of sort of almost delegating? Because especially with it being, a purpose-driven company, leading a team must have that added challenge, because you have that ownership and passion and yourself, but you do need to hand over, as you say, ownership to the team to empower them.
Yeah, and I think again, as we grow, recruiting those right people who have those same values and passions is perhaps even more important. When there were just a few of us and we were in one room, it was really easy. We were all super passionate and everybody mucked in with everything together. And as you get bigger, you silo more into different areas. And it can become harder to maintain that culture and those behaviors which are so important to us. We all spend so much of our time working. You have to kind of want to get out of bed and turn up. Like
Yeah,
in lots of ways, I think it's so much easier if you believe in what you're doing. If you're
yeah,
working for a business where it's like, well, here's a purpose, like, yeah, I want to save turtles or climate change or whatever it might be. And I know I'm having an impact in doing that. It makes it so much easier just to show up every day. So
yeah,
in that respect, being value led is an absolute bonus, superpower.
yeah. Yes. And you talked about the hospitality industry being one of your biggest sort of client sectors.
Yeah.
What opportunities do you see for, and have you seen for positive change within the hospitality industry specifically?
Oh, I think it's changed quite a lot actually in the last 6 to 8 years. I think when we first started, the hospitality customers we were talking to, a lot of them didn't care. It was sort of very low down list of priorities. And it's funny, you can like really bang on about stuff and feel like there's very little change. And then you get these periods where there's a sort of tipping point. And for us and for my sector, Blue Planet was one of those.
Wow. Yes.
And especially for the bars that we talk to more than the restaurants, and Exeter's a university city. And we had people saying, you know, we get students drunk at like 1 o'clock in the morning going, no, I'm not going to have a plastic straw. Just because David
So they're
Attenborough.
driving the change even at 1 in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Which I thought was fascinating because obviously I've been talking about this stuff for like 25 years, but Blue Planet had a turtle with a straw up its nose, and all of a sudden, all our
Yeah,
hospitality customers were like, right, oh my God, what do we do instead? And obviously that's moved on since then. But Blue Planet was suddenly a tipping point where suddenly the public were talking about something different. They were
yeah,
asking the places they were going to if there was a more sustainable alternative. And I think that really raised it. I think at the moment, financial pressures are a new one. And I think the high street's really been hit by changes to business rates, NI, probably
yeah,
a drop in discretionary spend, which I think we're seeing in our customer base. I think we're quite a good bellwether because obviously people are busier, they throw away more.
yeah,
And at some point, I want to do like a, you know, The Economist has its Big Mac index for global pricing. I want to do like a bin index to a kind of pre-warning of economic activity. So I think there's a lot of pressures on a lot of hospitality businesses at the moment. And so
yeah,
that means actually they're looking at cost, which again, you know, back of envelope, a rubbish bin's probably twice the price of a recycling bin. You know, so
yeah,
the super back of envelope, look, if you can just separate better, you will save money at the
yeah.
very,
So it's
very
making that
basic.
business case, isn't it? So it's an
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah,
So I think sadly the financial pressures might mean that more hospitality businesses now are kind of saying, actually, we need to look at our costs and oh, actually, here's a fairly straightforward way of just consistently lowering a cost here that in good times you might not pay that much attention to.
yeah. And what, with that in mind, what makes for a successful partnership with a particular business or hospitality group?
So somebody who wants to actually make that change.
Yeah.
So we allowed to name customers? So we work with Rockfish at the moment, who are a really nice seafood fish and chip chain here in the southwest, and their team's like super engaged. And when you tell them to scan the bin and tell us if it's full, like we will build that pattern, and then you know we'll increase and decrease collections based on what happened last year and stuff. And you talk to people in the kitchen, and they're so engaged about, well, what do I do about this? You know, is there a better alternative to blue paper towels, which is just awful generally,
Yeah.
and in
Yeah.
the rubbish
And
bin, and I'll
they're
not get
everywhere in
you.
a kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be a better alternative apart from a laundry version, really, at the moment. So to have somebody who actually is interested in seeing how they perform and wanting to do better, is really brilliant for us, because hopefully we can then support them on that journey. At the very least, show them how the different sites are doing against each other. And it's still not everywhere, that kind of awareness, but for a lot of our customers, and the ones probably I enjoy working with most, the ones where I can go out on site and talk to people about what they're doing, and they get creative about what they're doing differently. There are some businesses, especially around probably more corporate catering or sort of education catering, where they're putting a lot more thought into that food prep wastage and what can be done with it, and how, even your peelings can be turned into different products, and experimenting with those sorts of things. And for me, it's wonderful to be able to share those stories out wider to inspire people, especially people in kitchens, about stuff you can do with things that might be waste.
It taps into their creativity as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it just gets people talking. There's an office we work with in London, and they've done like protein balls out of beetroot peelings, and literally just had them out, for free for people to taste and get feedback on. But it gets people talking and thinking, and in every one person who you can make think just once a little differently about what they're doing is having a positive impact. And I hope that ripple effect just keeps on rolling out, even though they feel like they're small changes.
What do you think people still misunderstand, though, about waste and sustainability?
Oh, waste. How interesting it is. Someone should go out to people and say, we're trying to make bins sexy, come on. Because I don't think anybody ever thinks, taking the bags out to your bins the exciting part of your day. What they misunderstand, basic stuff around pricing. So personal frustration, you get charged per lift, for every time the bin's emptied, and people look at that rather the effectiveness of how they're using it. So, we talk to people where they might get a cheap price per lift, but we know their bins are being emptied more than twice as much as they need to be, for example.
So they're not having a deeper look at the impact they're having. Yeah,
absolutely. And the problem with the waste management sector, like all the utility companies, we need to be, if we're going to improve climate outcomes, environmental outcomes, we need to use less water or electricity, produce less waste. But the companies that provide that service earn their money from you using that stuff. So there is no incentive with the big companies to actually make you reduce the amount of waste you produce, the amount of electricity or water. And you tend to get discounts the more you use, your unit price becomes cheaper. We've built in all these terrible disincentives, which is why in our business, we've separated out the platform from the waste management services. So there's a monthly subscription from the platform. And we're saying to people, look, this is the bit of the business we want to grow. We want to reduce how much waste you produce, because you're paying us a subscription for us to help you do that, which is cheap as chips, like £1 a day or something.
Yeah.
So I think there's a misunderstanding about the effectiveness, and people believe if somebody says your bin needs emptying, 7 times a week, well, obviously it does, when it might not, because nobody's rummaging around in them like I do.
Yeah. So I mean, you touched upon it there, but how important is that transparency and data in helping businesses to act more responsibly?
I think it's really important. So, at the basic level, understanding if you're paying for a bin to be emptied that's only ever half full most of the time, or, seasonally part of the time. So you're overpaying, and there's a carbon impact to that. So your average bin lorry does 4 miles to the gallon. They're 26-ton diesel vehicles driving around largely our city centres, which are often pedestrianised. They're like horribly inappropriate vehicles for most European cities. So the less of those we got driving around, the better,
Yeah.
regardless of the disposal of the waste. So understanding that, I think, is important. I think increasingly, especially for businesses who want to be B Corp, who have net zero targets, who are interested in any ESG reporting, knowing that you've got an auditable trail about where that waste goes is really important. So we do like really simple diagrams, the little vehicles, so you can see how many miles and where the different materials are going to from your sites, because then you can communicate that to people. So I think there's a real trust and brand integrity issue around knowing that what goes in your bin and where it's going is legit and trustworthy and robust. So all of that becomes increasingly important. And for our multi-site customers, a lot of it is about better performance. So being able to quickly see which site is producing more waste per cover, for example.
One thing that I think you mentioned earlier was that initially you were working with companies that, that were sort of easily buying in to what you were saying, but actually it's the ones that are the harder sell that you should be working with. So how do you make that sort of argument for those easy wins, those incremental changes, and how everyone can play a part in that as part of the bigger picture? Yeah.
It ends up being about price,
right,
and cost. The actual cost effectiveness of a service. For people who don't care about environmental issues, you come at it from another way, because we're still giving the environmental benefit. So, just getting some kebab or fried chicken shop to actually pull its cardboard out and put it in a separate cardboard bin will save them money. And if that's why they do it, that's fine by me. So it's I think there's still, it surprises me how wide the spectrum is of businesses, from your B Corp, got everything nailed down, sort of super engaged staff, down to, your small one-man band type thing, where they would even be cross that they have to have something other than a rubbish bin. We're also lucky legislation's changed. So don't have any choice now. I mean, legally, you probably should have always separated more, but since simpler recycling came in, everybody has to have source separated food, glass, recycling, rubbish. And according to the legislation, paper and card should be separate from your other dry recyclables as well. So if there's space, you are talking about 5 stages of separation.
Yeah. So there's really been that sort of forced compliancy, as well as obviously you wanting to change hearts and minds, but you can come at it at different angles and actually get the same result.
Yeah. And for a lot of our customers who are a bit bigger, we've always encouraged them to have separate cardboard bins, for example, because I don't know if you've ever looked in a bin recently, but if you've got a recycling bin and you chuck a bag of recycling in and then flat pack a cardboard box, then you just basically halve the space in the bin.
Yeah.
So it's always been a kind of cost efficiency argument with them. Just put it in a separate cardboard bin and you will get more in your recycling bin. We'll just split them out. So a lot of our customers were doing that anyway. So we have super levels of compliance.
That's great.
Yeah. Quite lucky.
So looking ahead, you've taken us on the journey how things have evolved along the way. What's next for you and Binit, and what excites you about the future? Is it generally an optimistic feeling that you have about the future?
Yeah, it is actually. And there's a lot around growth. So obviously, every year I want to double revenues and just keep doubling revenues, and then I get disappointed when we don't. I heard one of the team telling somebody else on a training session, but Philippa always sets targets like that, as if they didn't have to pay attention to them, which I thought was interesting. So there's obviously the growth of the business, but at the moment we've hardware which we're trialing on basically wheel bins that you see outside buildings. And we've built this data picture to understand waste flows sort of between sites and be able to compare and analyze and give these insights between sites. So we want to roll out the hardware when it's finally finished its testing and get that out much, much more widely. But I'm also interested about if we can make our technology work within big single sites. So I'm thinking food production. So we have some food production companies, you know, where they're restaurants, but they have a factory somewhere as well.
Yep.
It's the same sort of principle. You've got all these points inside where waste is being produced and collected, which can be really quite different from, you know, prep to cooking to the storage, you know, really different. And in theory, the tech should all work the same. So, you know, from an intellectual and technology point of view, I'm interested to see if we can make it work inside in some of these big sites in the same way that we work outside. I think we kind of done the thinking and we've got the software. It's whether we can make a hardware tool that would work the same. And the nice thing about what we do, because we don't run vehicles, so we subcontract all our collections. So we own the bins because we have the tech in the bins, but we have a software and a hardware product. We want to sell that into Europe. So much more of a kind of licensing model in Europe. So potentially not necessarily managing contracts. So one of our hospitality customers actually that we're talking to at the moment, you know, they've a site in Florida, they've sites in the Middle East, and there's no reason why we can't pull the data from those into our platform as well. We don't need to be limited to the UK, so they get proper comparisons, you know, proper reporting.
That's really exciting. And do you know if there's any sort of anything similar in Europe and beyond?
There's nobody doing what we're doing with the kind of fullness, weight, analysis, insights part. So I think that part is quite unique, and nobody does it with data. Other people try and do it with sensors. And like I say, you know, we made a sensor in a chocolate box early on, but sensors look down to see how full something is, and bins don't fill up like water in a bath. So they give a lot of inaccurate readings because
Right.
people put all the bin bags on the nearest side to the lid, or they put in a broom and the handle sticks up and it thinks the bin's full. So you get a lot of inaccurate readings from sensors, which is why we do it through data and algorithms and other things, because at the end of the day, they're bins. They get battered around. You have to spend a lot of money to protect a sensitive sensor that then just gives you rubbish readings. Boom, boom.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. So it feels like there's much more opportunity and growth to come for the business.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah. The nice and sad thing about our sector is every business is a potential customer. Everybody throws stuff away. In terms of the bit with customers, we understand a lot about how businesses work by looking in their bins. And I think I need to figure out a more effective way of feeding that back. Because if you're throwing stuff away, there's an inefficiency in your business somewhere. You've paid to buy something and then you're paying me to collect it afterwards. And I think there's a lot more we can do in being able to describe to people the stuff that maybe they're getting rid of too quickly or that there's better alternatives for. So yeah, I haven't figured quite how to do that apart from going around and chatting to people and rummaging through their bins. But it'd be brilliant if there was a technological version of it that's a bit more scalable than me and your business.
Yes. Yes. But again, it's about having that data and that real life sort of tangible examples to be able to shape and make that business case again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it all comes down to the data.
Yeah.
The end of the day. Yeah.
Great. And then in terms of advice for sort of talent coming through, what advice would you give to young emerging leaders who want to make a difference in sustainability, in waste, or as entrepreneurs coming through?
I think kind of looking back, one of the most valuable things for me has been around my network. And I don't know if I explicitly set out to do this, but building your network from the beginning, I think, is just really, really important. in my 20s, when I was working in London, I would go out to green drinks and we'd just drink basically. But with other people who had an interest in sustainability, for example, and went to lots and lots of networking events. And back then it was largely about drinking and being sociable. But now, 25 years later, the people that I met then, who I'm still friends with and in contact with, you know, like me, are all decision makers and more senior people at a wide range of businesses all around the world. And you can't make those connections with those leaders as easily at this point in your career, always, in the same way as that somebody I got drunk with at a conference when I was 22. So building your networks professionally, I think, is really important, because these are the people that I can reach out to have a meeting with, to have a question with about what's going on in their business or how they tackle something. So there's the benefit to your business from kind of expansion and growth and potential new customers. But as an individual, having that support network and other people who might be further ahead on the journey, who you can ask advice of and go for a coffee with. And especially as a founder, it's lonely, it's hard, and it's 24/7 really running a business, especially in the early days. It's literally you eat, sleep and drink it. So to be having other people that you can talk to, even if it's just have a blooming whinge, is wonderful. Because ultimately it's all about the people, isn't it? The stuff that you remember on your deathbed, it won't be the hours you've worked, it's the people.
The people.
The people you spend time with that you end up caring about. So build your networks, partly because you never know when they might be useful, but as a human being and as a professional, they will serve you well. Be good to people. Keep in touch with them.
Yeah, and you touched upon it earlier, around building your team and how that's become even more important in terms of who you're looking for now. So, what qualities do you look for in people joining your team?
It's changed since the early days, actually. So in the beginning, it was very much about you and your attitude. And we've always done like blind recruitment. So somebody goes through, we take out any reference to gender, ethnicity, down to like, you know, if you've said you captain of a rugby team or head of your boarding house, they'd take that out. So you wouldn't even know what sort of educational background somebody had come from. Or where they had come from. And we got a really, really diverse group actually here within the office now as a result. At the point we're at now, where we're needing to scale for the first time ever, I'm having to recruit people based on experience actually, and people who have proven ability to manage teams, manage a bigger budget, be able to grow, which feels a bit weird because we've always been, no, we don't want a CV. Send us a video about what you wish you could recycle and why, you know, and gone for people with question. So it's a change, and one I'm kind of still figuring out how to do. But yeah, sadly, needing more experience now.
Yeah. And what kind of experience are you looking for?
At this point, people who've been with fast growth businesses, you know, because you need to be a bit scrappy. When we raised the first investment round, I bought myself a t-shirt that said "winging it."
Yeah. So that entrepreneurial spirit, even if they're not an entrepreneur themselves, having that sort of drive, get up and go, pushing things up.
Being a little bit more creative, you know. We use the Facebook mantra, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. So we were kicked out of an office in the early days because there was an empty floor above us, so we were using it to store our bins rather than for storage, and they went to show a tenant round. So we were kicked out of our shared workspace early on. So doesn't always work, but you know, part of the journey. But I think if you come from a big corporate where you're used to an HR department and an IT department and the rest of it, you're not so well suited to this environment, because if we want to change something, we just change it. And we do that all the time. We're constantly building new features, changing our processes, you know.
So you have to adapt.
Yes.
adapt and respond quite quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So people who've been on that, 1 to 10 million revenue growth hockey stick bit, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And looking back now, is there one decision you're especially glad that you made, or is there something you wish you'd known at the start of the journey?
Never think about which ones I'm really glad I made. There's certain people I'm really glad I hired,
Yeah.
actually. Most
Back to the
definitely.
people piece.
Yeah, back to the people piece. This is the first business where I've raised investment. The other businesses I've run, I've just grown organically. So it was the first, and it's a very, very different beast. And I went into it completely naively, not knowing anything about it at all. And in my first investment round, I was watching, have you seen Silicon Valley, the American sitcom?
Yeah,
Basically watching that to learn what the terms were that I was being given. Um, so really, really ill prepared. So if I were to do it again, I'd perhaps prep a bit better
yeah,
for that part of it. And I think that for me has been one of the bits I've often found challenging. All our investors are impact investors. We're in purpose-driven business, but at the end of the day, they're only about making the money.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, and I still find that quite perplexing sometimes. um,
yeah,
so yeah, I think I would be better prepared for the investment raise and what that all means, the time that it takes, the
yeah,
negotiation. I get better at it each time.
yeah. But it's all a learning curve. So you still feel even now that you're learning. How do you
Oh
keep
God, yes.
how do you keep yourself sort of fresh in that sense, in terms of sort of motivation and learning?
Well, I just had 2 weeks off, so that's the first time in
That
quite a
helps.
few years, and that really, really helped. Yeah, really helped. I read a lot, so I'm lucky. I'm a voracious reader. So I read a lot, and the problem I have is focusing and just sticking to one thing, but it means I'm always excited about new ideas. So that's just part and parcel of my personality. I spend a lot of time in nature. So that's my grounding bit. And like I say, I'm lucky to live by the sea and near Dartmoor. So, and we're quite good here. People going out and going just for a walk at lunchtimes,
Yeah,
away from the office and go do grounding things instead. I think as you get older, you get better at doing those things because there has to be a balance or you burn yourself out.
yeah. No, that's all good advice. I think we're coming to the end of our conversation now, but is there any sort of closing remark or final sort of reflections that you'd like to share?
I think I feel very lucky that I have spent my whole working life doing stuff that I really enjoy. And I think one of the things that really fascinates me is how much it can change, like how you can keep learning new stuff and finding new opportunities. And whether you're interested in sustainability or not, I think there are a lot more opportunities out there than you can ever be aware of. The jobs that people will be doing in 10, 15 years' time haven't been invented yet.
Yeah,
So for me, that's super exciting, that idea of like just keeping those opportunities and that curiosity there, because it can take you in so many unexpected places, to so many unexpected places.
absolutely. Look, Philippa, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today. It's been really inspiring to hear how you've combined purpose with building a business and all the lessons that have come with that journey. And thank you to everyone who listens to this discussion. We hope you've taken away ideas and encouragement from this conversation, and we hope to see you next time.